I want you to picture standing at the edge of a swimming pool.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And you are learning to swim for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have stood on the deck for weeks, and you've been meticulously studying fluid dynamics on a whiteboard.
Oh, wow. Sounds exhausting already.
Yeah, exactly. You've memorized the exact angle your hand should enter the water. You've, calculated your own buoyancy, and you understand the mechanical theory of the freestyle stroke absolutely flawlessly.
Right, so theoretically, you're an expert.
Theoretically. But the moment you actually step up to the edge, and look down at the water and you try to jump, you just completely freeze.
You panic.
Yeah, your mind just goes totally blank. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, we are unpacking the hidden mechanics of language acquisition, and specifically, how to bypass that exact freeze response.
Which is such a common response, by the way. I mean, the gap between theoretical knowledge and actual physical execution is just massive.
It really is.
Knowing the rules of a system, whether it's a physical sport or like a mental exercise, it absolutely does not mean you can operate that system in real time.
Right. And to figure out how to bridge that gap, we are pulling our insights today from a really highly specialized resource. It's called the Daily Spoken English Guide for Beginners.
Yeah, and it's ostensibly this blueprint for mastering spoken English without, getting bogged down by textbooks.
Exactly. But really, it serves as a masterclass in overcoming the fear of starting literally any intimidating new skill. So, okay, let's unpack this, because if you look at the typical beginner described in this text, they aren't starting from absolute zero.
Right, they usually have some kind of foundation.
Yeah, they know the basic vocabulary, they understand the fundamental grammar rules, yet they remain totally trapped in silence.
Well, the source material actually pinpoints this initial roadblock, and it's entirely psychological.
It's fear.
Exactly. It is fear.
Yeah.
The learners are paralyzed by the expectation of their own mistakes.
Right, the paralysis of perfection.
Yeah, there is this pervasive, almost unconscious assumption that a sentence must be constructed perfectly in the mind before it is ever allowed to leave the mouth.
Which brings us back to that swimming pool analogy. It's the belief that if your entry angle isn't exactly 45 degrees, you just shouldn't jump in at all.
Which is a terrible way to learn to swim.
Definitely. But unpack the mechanics of that fear for me. If a learner knows the grammar rules, why doesn't that knowledge easily translate to speech?
Well, because knowing the rules is a conscious analytical process. You sit with a textbook, you analyze the sentence structure, you take your time.
Right, you're in study mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking, on the other hand, is a spontaneous, motor-driven process. The guide emphasizes that spoken English only improves through actual use.
Meaning the physical act of speaking, listening, and responding.
Yes. Memorizing vocabulary lists or staring at these complex grammar trees, it keeps the language trapped in the analytical part of the brain. It just never transfers to the active generative centers.
It's like trying to learn how to ride a bicycle by reading a physics textbook.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. You can memorize all the formulas for balance and momentum, but until you actually get on the bike and pedal, you're going absolutely nowhere.
And this raises an important question. How do you get them on the bike?
Right. If the goal is getting out of the textbook and into the water or onto the bike, how does the guide suggest a beginner actually do that without panicking?
By fundamentally shifting the context of the language.
Right.
The text argues for prioritizing daily, immediate language over, academic correctness.
So less textbook, more real life.
Exactly. We're talking about the language you use to greet a neighbor, ask for directions, or order a coffee.
Instead of debating philosophy or giving some pristine corporate presentation.
Right. And that practicality actually changes the brain's primary objective.
How so?
When you're standing at a counter ordering a coffee, the objective is acquiring the coffee. It's not demonstrating your grammatical superiority to the barista.
Oh, I see. The immediate physical goal strips away the academic pressure.
Exactly. The stakes plummet. And with lower stakes, that initial freeze response begins to thaw.
That brings up a massive logistical hurdle, though. If we know the goal is to lower the stakes by using daily language, what's the actual mechanism for doing that?
You mean, how do they physically start?
Yeah, a beginner still has to open their mouth and form the words.
Well, the source actually outlines a very specific three-step framework for this kind of practice. They call it the simple is smart framework.
Simple is smart. I like that.
Yeah, it's engineered to drastically lower the barrier to entry by removing friction from the learning process.
Okay, so what's step one?
Step one focuses entirely on utilizing very short sentences. Phrases like, I need some help, or I am feeling tired.
Oh, there's a fantastic quote in the text regarding this step. It says, simple English is not weak English. Simple English is smart English.
Adult learners often struggle with this concept.
Because we want to sound smart.
Exactly. We tend to conflate complex language with intelligence. An adult learning a new language often feels like infantilized when they're forced to use three-word sentences.
Yeah, their ego gets in the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you are building an entirely new neural pathway, complexity is your enemy.
So you keep it incredibly basic.
Yes. Short sentences are easier to retrieve from memory, they require less breath control, and they drastically reduce the surface area for grammatical errors.
You are intentionally shrinking the target. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And then step two of the framework moves from short sentences to narrating your daily routine.
Right, because the guide argues this is the easiest possible entry point.
Because you already know the intimate details of your own life. You don't have to make anything up.
Yeah, there's a guest featured in the source material named Rahul who perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the morning routine example.
Exactly. He talks about waking up at 6:30, getting fresh, brushing his teeth, and eating poha and tea for breakfast. It's incredibly mundane.
But effective. And then step three naturally follows up with question and answer formats.
Things like, do you like tea or coffee?
Right. Because real-world conversation is inherently a back-and-forth Q&A. It mimics the natural rhythm and ping-pong effect of actual human interaction.
Rather than forcing the learner to deliver a huge monologue.
Absolutely.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back on this framework a bit.
Okay, go for it.
If a learner wakes up every single day and just repeats the exact same sequence, like I wake up at 6:30, I brush my teeth, I eat poha, I drink tea, aren't they just hard-coding a tiny, largely useless fraction of the language?
It definitely looks limiting on the surface.
Right. Like, how does repeating the mundane actually lead to dynamic, spontaneous fluency? You can't talk about your breakfast routine all day.
You can't, but it cleverly solves the biggest bottleneck in early skill acquisition, which is cognitive load.
Cognitive load. Walk me through that.
When you attempt to speak a new language, your brain is attempting to run two incredibly demanding computational tasks simultaneously. First, it's trying to invent the content, the actual what to say. Second, it's trying to execute the mechanics, the how to say it.
Right, so that involves pulling the right vocabulary, arranging the syntax, and physically coordinating the mouth to make foreign sounds.
It is extreme mental multitasking. And the human brain is notorious for failing at multitasking.
Yeah, you're asking a beginner to be a creative writer and a translator at the exact same moment. No wonder they freeze.
Exactly. So by forcing the learner to talk about a deeply familiar routine, the framework completely eliminates that first task.
Oh, because you don't have to invent a narrative about your morning.
Right. You know exactly what you did and what you ate. The content is entirely automated.
That's fascinating.
It allows your brain to dedicate 100% of its processing power to the mechanics of the language.
So you're automating the content so you can focus entirely on the execution. It's like a musician practicing scale.
That's a great analogy.
Right. The notes of a C major scale never change. The musician doesn't have to compose the song while they play. They just run the scale over and over so they can focus purely on the dexterity of their fingers.
Exactly. You're building the physical and neurological infrastructure for fluency.
And once that's built,
Once that foundational infrastructure is rock solid and speaking simple sentences feels automatic, then you can start swapping in more complex ideas and sophisticated vocabulary.
okay, so automating the routine makes total sense, assuming you have someone to bounce those daily updates off of. But there's an obvious gap here.
The lack of a practice partner.
Yeah. If the third step of that framework relies on a Q&A format, what happens to the learner who, lives alone or works remotely?
How do they practice?
Right. How do they generate that back and forth interaction without a conversation partner?
Well, the guide addresses this directly, introducing a tool that circumvents the need for a partner altogether.
Which is?
Self-talk, the habit of speaking to yourself out loud throughout the day.
Oh, like muttering phrases like, I need to finish this report, or I will call him later.
Yeah, just while you're simply performing daily chores.
Literally walking around narrating your own life to an empty room. I imagine that feels incredibly unnatural for most people at first.
It feels strange, sure, but it effectively bypasses the brain's social threat response.
Because no one is watching.
Right. When you are completely alone, the fear of judgment evaporates, yet you're still forcing the physical and mental mechanisms of speech to operate.
That makes sense.
And the text highlights a couple of fatal mistakes many self-guided learners make when they try to practice alone like this.
What's the first one?
One is trying to memorize highly difficult, complex vocabulary way too early in the process.
Again, trying to sound smart before you can even speak.
Exactly. The other major pitfall is listening to English without ever actually speaking it aloud.
Listening without speaking. The guide stresses that listening is crucial, but you absolutely must open your mouth and speak, even if no one is there to hear it.
It is non-negotiable.
It makes me think of like a mental rehearsal for a stage play. Speaking English to yourself throughout the day is like rehearsing your lines where you are simultaneously the actor and the audience.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
Yeah, you're building up the muscle memory in your jaw and your tongue, but without the stage fight of having hundreds of people watching you perform.
And what's fascinating here is the distinction between active and passive learning. It's critical.
Break that down for us.
Listening to an English podcast or watching a movie with subtitles is a passive activity. Your brain is receiving information.
It feels highly productive, though.
It does feel productive, but it often creates an illusion of competence. Recognizing a word when you hear it tricks you into believing you can easily summon that word when you need to speak.
Which is usually not the case.
Right. Speaking aloud, conversely, forces your brain to actively construct sentences. It forces you to delve into your memory, retrieve the vocabulary, assemble the grammar, and physically produce the sounds.
So you can't just absorb a skill. You have to generate it. And generation is neurologically demanding.
Very demanding. That active construction is the true hurdle of fluency.
And because it's so demanding, the guide provides a fundamental mindset shift to help learners cope with the inevitable frustration.
Yes, a very important reframe.
It states, a mistake is not a problem. A mistake is a lesson.
Which sounds a bit cliche on the surface.
Right. We hear phrases like that all the time, often as generic motivational advice. But in the context of cognitive load and active generation, how does reframing a mistake actually help a learner progress?
Well, a mistake is simply the data your brain requires to calibrate and improve.
Okay, so it's feedback.
Exactly. If you're operating entirely within your comfort zone and never making mistakes, you aren't pushing the boundaries of your current neural pathways.
So when you stumble over a word while narrating your breakfast to an empty kitchen,
Your brain registers the error, flags the friction point, and adjusts the pathway for the next attempt. You have to embrace the messiness of that calibration process.
that makes total sense. So we know a learner has to speak aloud to force active generation. We know they have to reframe mistakes as necessary calibration data.
Yep.
And we know they should utilize simple sentences and automate the content by narrating their routines.
That's the foundation.
But let's look at the practical reality of modern life. We are all overwhelmed. Our schedules are completely packed.
Everyone is busy.
If active generation requires so much mental energy, how does someone actually fit this into a chaotic day without burning out?
The guide actually breaks this down into a highly rigid, highly actionable blueprint for daily practice.
Okay, lay it on us.
It's designed specifically to prove that you do not need to block out hours of your day to make meaningful, permanent progress. They call it the 5-5-5 plan.
The 5-5-5 plan, and the mechanics of this plan are beautifully straightforward, basically capping the total time commitment at exactly 15 minutes a day.
Just 15 minutes.
The first 5 minutes are dedicated to passive absorption, right?
Yeah.
You listen to a short English conversation.
Yep. It could be a brief video, a dialogue, or, a podcast segment.
Then the next 5 minutes shift into active mimicry. You repeat that conversation aloud. And the source emphasizes the importance of actively copying the pronunciation, the intonation, and the overall flow of the sentences.
You're just mirroring the sounds.
Right. Finally, the last 5 minutes demand independent generation. You answer simple questions about your day aloud. What did I do today? What did I eat? Who did I talk to?
It comprehensively covers the entire spectrum of language acquisition. Passive absorption to tune the ear, active mimicry to train the physical muscles of the mouth, and independent generation to force the brain to retrieve and assemble the language on its own.
All achieved in just 15 minutes.
Yes. And there is a golden rule attached to this blueprint in the guide.
Which is?
15 minutes every day is better than 2 hours once a week.
So what does this all mean for the listener? It means this approach Completely removes the ultimate excuse of, oh, I don't have the time.
Because everyone has 15 minutes.
Exactly. You can execute this plan during your morning commute while you're waiting for water to boil or simply winding down at night.
It's incredibly accessible.
But beyond the scheduling convenience, why is the daily structure so much more effective than, say, a weekly deep dive study session?
Scientifically speaking, consistency absolutely trumps intensity when it comes to long-term skill acquisition.
Oh, how so?
Language, at its core, is a behavioral habit.
Hmm.
It's not a cramming exercise for a final exam. If you study for 2 grueling hours every Sunday, you're mostly just creating massive cognitive fatigue.
You burn yourself out.
Right. And by the time you return to the material 7 days later, your brain is naturally pruned away a significant portion of that information.
Oh, because it didn't seem immediately relevant to your daily survival.
Exactly. The brain is highly efficient. If you don't use the information, the brain assumes you don't need it, and it essentially deletes the file to save space.
Wow. But engaging with the language for just 15 minutes every single day sends a radically different signal to your brain.
It signals that this information is vital for daily functioning.
Right. It builds and reinforces permanent neurological pathways.
Yes, that daily, repeated exposure cements the skill into your long-term memory in a way that binge studying simply cannot replicate.
It makes me think of trying to carve a canyon.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you blast a landscape with a massive flash flood once a year, you just create a bunch of chaos and runoff.
Right, the water just washes away.
Exactly. It doesn't stick around long enough to change the terrain. But if you have a steady, small river flowing over that same rock every single day, year after year, it eventually carves a permanent canyon.
That's beautiful.
The daily habit is the river.
Small, consistent actions compound over time, altering the physical landscape of your brain, just like that river alters the rock.
It's so empowering to think about it that way.
It demystifies the entire learning process. It takes language acquisition down from this intimidating academic pedestal and transforms it into a practical, everyday tool that anyone can integrate into their life.
This has been such a revealing look at the mechanics of how we actually learn and adapt.
It really has.
Let's quickly recap the core insights we've uncovered today from the Daily Spoken English Guide for Beginners. First, if you want to speak a language, you have to bypass the textbook and actually speak it.
Lower the stakes and start with short, smart sentences.
Right. Second, automate your content by narrating your daily routine like your morning tea to remove the immense cognitive pressure of deciding what to say.
Just focus on the how.
Exactly. Third, practice self-talk. Speak aloud even when you are totally alone to transition from passive listening to active generation, building that vital muscle memory.
And finally, embrace the 15-minute 555 daily habit.
Understanding that mistakes are not failures, they're simply the calibration data your brain needs to improve.
The barrier to entry isn't the inherent difficulty of the language. It is the expectation of immediate perfection.
Once you drop that expectation, the friction just disappears.
It really does.
And that leaves me with a final thought, a provocative question for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We've established through this text that spoken fluency is much more about daily habit, consistency, and overcoming the fear of imperfection than it is about sheer intellect or studying complex rules.
Right.
So I want you to examine your own life. What other intimidating skills have you been putting off because you were terrified of the beginner's freeze?
That is a great question.
Whether it's public speaking, learning to write code, or finally picking up that instrument, gathering dust in the corner, what could you master simply by dropping the need for theoretical perfection and dedicating just 15 minutes a day to practicing out loud?
You'll never know until you try.
Exactly. Don't just stare at the whiteboard, jump in the pool, expect to flail a bit, expect to swallow some water, but know that moving your arms is the only way you will ever learn to swim. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take that first brave step today, and we will catch you next time.